Welcome to Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape podcast. Hosted by Dr. Holly Krutka, Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. The show highlights SER's role supporting our mission to promote energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming.
Welcome back, listeners. Today we're shining a spotlight on one of the School of Energy Resources' outstanding students, Harper Pollock. Harper is currently earning her degree here in Energy Resource Management and Development. And one thing we put a high value on here at the School of Energy Resources and really across the University of Wyoming is what we call experiential learning. And that can take a lot of different forms, internships with companies, visiting energy sites. And in Harper's case, during the spring of 2025, she took her education beyond the classroom by interning with the Wyoming Governor's Office. So today we'll hear from Harper about what it's like to work at the highest level of state government in Wyoming, how her time at the University of Wyoming and the School of Energy Resources prepared her for the experience, and what she's learned about policymaking, energy, and public service along the way. So welcome, Harper. Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with your background and your path. How did you get here to be pursuing a degree at the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources?
Yeah, so I originally actually wanted to go into animal science and then end up going to vet school. My mom actually worked as a vet tech for years, and so I got to spend a lot of time at her vet clinic and just helping out there, watching surgeries and dealing with some of the animals. And then, so once I began looking at colleges, I applied originally in animal science. And then as my senior year continued of high school, I actually ended up writing a paper on nuclear energy in America for my chemistry class, and I found that more interesting than I did animal science at the moment. So then once I found out that UW had the School of Energy Resources, I changed my major and actually ended up here, and I've been really enjoying it so far.
Oh, that's good to hear. And you're here at such an exciting time, especially for the nuclear energy space. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But, having having Wyoming's first nuclear power plant ever, which happens to be an advanced reactor in the TerraPower Natrium project, such an exciting time. And being the state's only 4-year research institution, we're really lucky because we get to work with TerraPower. We kind of get some cutting edge work. And you've gone far above and beyond that. So we'll talk about that later, but let's focus on, so you came to UW and you chose to pursue a degree in energy resource management and development. So that's our undergrad degree, and there's 2 concentrations, professional land management and then energy and environmental systems. And you chose energy and environmental systems, which we also call EES. So why did you choose that specifically?
I've always been really interested in the outdoors, natural resources, and environmental sciences. So I'm actually from Casper, Wyoming. So it's not too far, but it has a big agriculture, energy, and then also natural resource industries. And then, so both my parents actually came from an agricultural background, and they made sure that I did too. So ever since I was little, I've been learning about ag, and then also energy and natural resources and how they could all work together. So I'm a big believer in multiple use. That's one of my favorite things to talk about, and how to balance everything so everything can, end up on one tract of land. And then with the energy and environmental systems concentration, this has really been able to let me dive deeper in that and learn how agriculture can work with energy, and then also natural resources development, specifically oil and natural gas, and how that can fall in with recreation and grazing. And
I think Wyoming does a great job of what you're calling multiple use, which is really the right word, right?
Yeah.
One piece of land or one ranch can have multiple use, and they can coexist successfully. So, and you've seen that in your life. That's really, thank you for sharing that. So can you talk about some of the insights of the curriculum that you've taken, and maybe courses that you found particularly interesting or impactful, especially based on that background?
Sure. So, I've taken all the basics. I've had to take math, biology, chemistry, that sort of thing. But there's been such I know there's been some really interesting ones that I've had to take. Like last semester, I took Introduction to Rangeland Management, which I really enjoyed just because, well, I do come from that ag background, and like I already knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know the full extent of what going into range management really was about. And my professor was great. He made it really entertaining.
So who teaches that class?
Brian Sabady.
Okay.
And I mean, it was an 8 a.m., so it was a little rough to get up. But like, that class just really made it worth it, being up at 8 o'clock in the morning and listening to that. Yes. This semester, I'm also taking Introduction to Soil Sciences, which I'm really enjoying. I did FFA throughout high school. Specifically, one of my favorite contests was agronomy, which is like a big like soil and plant sciences contest. So I had to do a lot with soils, texturing it and judging it. And so it's been really nice to get back into that and learn more about that, specifically in the field. We've had multiple homeworks where our job is to just like go dig up the soil in our backyard and bring it in so we can test it during our labs.
It's funny how complex soil is.
Yeah.
It's not, I feel like at my house it's all clay, but as a general rule, at least when I try to grow something, and there's rocks too, not just clay. But yeah, no, soil can be very different and very complex. So FFA, Future Farmers of America. So is that right?
It used to stand for Future Farmers of America. They changed it to just FFA.
Doesn't it stand for anything?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Learn something every day. Okay. So, but I do think what you're talking about is really important and a fundamental component of our program, how you are taking courses all over the University of Wyoming. Yeah. Right? Like you're in the College of Engineering and Physical Science for those science courses you mentioned, but then that soil science and rangeland class are over in the College of Ag Life Sciences and Natural Resources. You have some in College of Business. And then that degree, I think, is very multidisciplinary. Sometimes we call it interdisciplinary. And it really gives students a broad base, learning about all those different topics, not so narrow, so that you can go a lot of different places throughout the course of your career. Yeah. So how do you think that kind of interdisciplinary curriculum might prepare you for something like a law degree or a law career?
Sure. So actually working at the governor's office, a lot of the people that I work with are actually lawyers. They have gone to law school, and so they've talked to me a lot about that. So law school is something that I'm actually considering. I just don't know if it's going to be like the final path yet. But regardless, all of my classes will help me gain like a deeper understanding of like specifically land and natural resource law, which is what I'm mostly interested in. I believe that if you become a lawyer, you have to like love what you do, and you have to have a passion for what you do, and specifically in the field that you want to go into. So, land and natural resource law is something I'm passionate about and that I would like to continue with, but we'll see.
Yeah, and you're trying a lot of different things. And what year are you?
Yeah. I'm sophomore, but then my credits are junior.
Yeah, so I hear ya. I have a 5-year undergrad degree as well. It happens. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you still have plenty of time. And I think maybe some of these experiential learning experiences that you're taking might help you kind of figure out what you want to do. But at the same time, I think it's okay to not know what you want to do, even when you're out in your career. I was talking to someone the other day who is in his mid-60s. And I think I said something like, yeah, someday I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, yeah, me too. I think to your point, you just got to find things that you find really interesting and go have fun with them. So, and you can make a difference doing it. So students at UW and SCR, really, we try hard to, if a student wants to do some form of experiential learning, that we're going to find a way for that to happen. And like I said, that can include all different kinds of things. It can include internships, visiting energy sites. We have a summer course where you can go around and see, firsthand some of the incredible energy projects underway across Wyoming. And there's so many, it's hard to even figure out which ones to do. It's a really popular, we get really great feedback from that course. So, but you most recently opted for an internship with the governor's office, which is ongoing. It's not over. So talk about that experience. Like, what are your primary responsibilities, and how are you tying that back to your education here in your studies?
Yeah. So I actually just kind of fell into working at the governor's office.
Okay, I don't know if I believe that. What do you mean? You don't supposed to fall into it. Just showed up at the Capitol and there was a job.
I mean, not quite.
Okay.
But last semester, so I was actually TA over here for general chemistry, and I wasn't able to renew that for the spring semester, so I was actually looking for a job. So I went in to talk to Cami about finding internships or even jobs just for the spring semester into the summer. And she actually told me that the governor's office was looking for an intern and asked if I would be interested in that. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. So that's how I ended up working at the governor's office. I mean, I've been really enjoying it there. Mm-hmm. I learn something new every day, which is something that I really value. Like, I'd like to continue to learn something new. So I actually work under Randall Luthi, which is the executive policy advisor for the governor. He's also the main energy policy advisor for the governor. So he's given me a ton of research projects. Most of them have to do with carbon capture and storage. So I've been doing a lot of research on that. And that's something that I've talked a lot about in my classes, but I've never really had very much like exposure to in the real world, if you will. I mean, most of it is very new and ongoing. There's not very many CCUS projects going on right now. So there is a lot of research to be done. And so just looking up, random carbon capture, storage, facts and whatnot has been really interesting.
Okay, so Randall Luthi is also, he's the liaison to our board here at the School of Energy Resources, which is called the Energy Resources Council. And that group is nominated by the governor, confirmed by the Wyoming Senate. So it's a governance board. And so he's the liaison. So we're always in contact with him. And I remember how this happened now that you told that story, is that he reached out and he needed help and thought maybe an intern could help with some research. And then I think you had expressed, and you have this passion for natural resource law and energy, right? So you had told that to Cami Donne, Dr. Cami Donne, and she is our academic director here at the School of Energy Resources. And so that's how that happened. Didn't fall into it. But actually what you did was just kind of express your interests and passion to your advisor, and that's how it came together. But I also think that's one area where we're really lucky based on our size that we can make those connections. So talk about what ways have your classes here, your academic background, and even maybe before that, your non-academic background prepared you for the challenges and the work you've been doing during the internship?
Sure. So, I mean, growing up in Wyoming, I've always heard about a lot of the problems that the state is facing, whether that be like energy, natural resource, or agriculture. Throughout high school, I was involved, like I said, in FFA, took a lot of ag classes. So there was always, once a week, we would go through and just look up and see, some of the problems that were going on here, in Wyoming and in the U.S.
What kind of problems did you learn about?
A lot of the things that I found really interesting were like trade. So doing a lot of specifically like agricultural trade overseas, and a lot of the trade agreements that we had. And they change almost every single year without fail. So I learned a lot about, trade and that sort of thing. There was also some other issues, surrounding like GMOs and that sort of thing as well. I just never really got into that like some of the other kids did.
Did you look at like energy and natural resource stuff in high school? Or was that kind of here at UW and SCR when you started to to get interested in that?
Yeah. So energy I never really looked at in high school. Beside my nuclear paper, that's when I really started getting into it.
And besides living in Casper, which kind of, maybe you can't totally avoid it.
No, you can't. But natural resources, I mean, my dad's a big outdoorsman. And so every summer we go out and we go hiking and hunting and fishing and that sort of thing. So I always had like an interest in that. We also covered some of it in like my ag courses, but it was never that deep, if that makes any sense. It was mostly just ag that we covered. So natural resources was something I kind of fell into later, even though I was already very interested in it.
Okay. So how are our classes here in your academic background, did they help get you ready for this internship?
Yeah.
They did? How?
Yeah. So right now, I'm actually taking federal public land law, and that's also one of my favorite classes that I've taken.
And who's teaching that? Is it?
Brian Leonard.
Brian Leonard. He's our new-ish SCR faculty member who is in the Hobb School of Environment and Natural Resources. And to your point, that alone shows you the collaboration between, Hobb is very focused on conservation and wildlife and recreation and tourism, whereas we're focused on energy protection. But of course, land and in this case, federal land really overlaps those. Sorry, I keep interrupting. So how did that class help?
So that class, we learn about a new sector of like natural resources every day. So we actually just finished up Forest Service and BLM land, and now we're moving on to tribal land, I think tomorrow. So we'll get to learn about that. And Wyoming is mostly federal land. And so learning more and like diving deeper into the federal land, not only here in Wyoming, but like across, especially the Western United States, has been super interesting. I have a list on my computer of questions that I have for that class. And so usually I'll go talk to Dr. Leonard about it during his office hours, but I also ask some of the people at the governor's office about it, since they have experience, actually dealing with federal land here in Wyoming. And so every day I bring in like a sticky note to work, and I ask them my questions.
Do you get the same answer?
Sometimes. It depends on, exactly what the question is. The other day we were learning about minerals in that class. And so I was talking to one of the other policy advisors, and I was like, okay, I told him, I was like, water is not a mineral, according to the Mineral Leasing Act. And I was like, but steam is. Like geothermal steam is considered a mineral. And I was like, so how does that work? How does that work? And he wasn't completely sure, but he was like, yeah, like I would say that ice is a mineral. And I was like, oh, okay.
But water isn't?
But water's not a mineral.
Did you tell him that ice is made out of water?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh. Okay. But it must be really crazy to be taking that class now in spring of 2025. It seems like things are changing so much, like such a big shift in federal policy. Yeah. Are you guys talking about that?
We talked a little bit about it in class. We go over some court cases, and so there's been some like recent court cases that are, currently going through the process. Like the corner crossing one was a big one that we talked about.
Can you talk about that at all? Do you feel like you can explain it?
Yeah.
To me, I just read about it in the news. You guys get like an expert to teach you in a course. So talk about it.
So corner crossing is like, especially in like southwestern Wyoming, we have what they call the checkerboard. And so most of it is federal land that is interlocked by specifically private land. And so it's just, it's a checkerboard pattern. Every other square is federal. And then a lot of the times, especially like in southwestern Wyoming, they have huge amounts of antelope and deer. And so a lot of the hunters will go out there, and federal land is public land. So they can go and hunt on the federal land. Now, every township, so every 640 acres, there's a pin that's in the ground that tells you, where that square ends. Previously, a lot of people have been able to step over the pin and cross onto another section of federal land. They won't typically touch the private landowner's property, and usually the private landowners are just like, okay, whatever, I guess. As long as you don't mess with, my property or my livestock, go for it. And the landowners that aren't okay with it have brought it up to the courts, and the courts have been like, well, they didn't really do anything to your property, so it is what it is, don't do it again. Recently, there's been a case down near, I think it was Elk Mountain, with a landowner who had intermixed federal parcels. And there was a couple hunters that crossed over onto the other.
Stepped over the pin.
Yeah, stepped over the pin.
So never touched non-federal land. Okay.
And he, told them, he was like, hey, you're not allowed to be on, this section of land. And they were like, well, it's public, so we technically are. And so he called the sheriff, and the sheriff really didn't do anything about it. The hunters came back the next hunting season, and the landowner had put up, well, they've been calling it the smallest fence in the world.
So it's just over the corner?
Yeah, just over the corner.
Okay.
It's 2 T-posts with a sign hanging off of it. That's like private property, do not trespass. And the hunters, basically they built a ladder to go over this little tiny like T-post fence. And then they crossed onto the federal parcel again. The landowner had a fit about it. And, well, he called the sheriff again. The sheriff didn't do anything. And so he took the hunters to court. And it's been decided, I think it's the Ninth Circuit, decided that the hunters were allowed to cross over those corners. And it's expected to go to the Supreme Court, but we'll see what happens with that.
It's really interesting. And it's such a dynamic time. And I think it must be really exciting to like be in Wyoming and learning from experts, like federal lands experts, as those court cases are being decided. And it's crazy how it's like 2 or 3 people, having this disagreement about what does it mean to step over this little pin.
Yeah.
And it's the implications are huge though.
Yeah.
So is there anything, let's get back to your internship, that I know you're not done, but what you've done to date, has any of it kind of changed the way you're thinking about energy policies or environmental management in Wyoming? And maybe that will like make you look at your classes differently?
Yeah. So working in policy is not something that's very easy all the time. A lot of it, like, you can't let your personal opinion cloud your decision overall. I mean, there's so many different issues that I work with, whether that be energy or ag or natural resources. And I've recently been working on a lot of wildlife problems as well. And so, I've had to look at all the facts, and I've had to get all the facts lined out, and you base your decision off the facts rather than like a personal opinion that you have. And that can definitely be pretty hard, just because, as a human, you're always going to have an opinion. You're always going to be opinionated.
Some more than others.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, policy is a little tough, but bringing all the research that I've done for work into some of my classes has been super interesting. People will ask me what I think about a certain issue, and I'll be like, let me research that before you answer, say anything, rather than just going off what I know previously. Like I said, every day I walk into work with a sticky note of questions for the policy advisors, and some of them are very excited to see, what I have for them that day. Some of them, I wonder if they get tired of me. So,
I'm sure they're not. They're tired of me. They're like,
but they're all super nice about it. They all will be sure to explain to me, pieces of policy or pieces of whatever I'm working on that I don't understand. And then, we'll go from there. I mean, Mr. Luthi makes sure to write everything down. He always has like a pad of paper with him that he'll just write everything down for me. So then I have that as a reference for, my project or a class. So
that's very good to hear. So I think you've highlighted some really cool examples of why Wyoming is a great place to work on energy policy and environmental management. You're doing that both through your degree program here at the School of Energy Resources and also this internship. So can you talk about how you kind of like grown your knowledge about in these areas?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, like I said, a lot of what I work with is, energy policy. I've also had the chance to do a lot of like federal and state lands and wildlife work as well. And so, I mean, being interested in like energy and natural resources, it's really broadened my understanding of some of those issues, if you will, within the state. I mean, as a hunter and outdoorsman, like wildlife has been something that I've always been interested in, and now I get the chance to like research it and like work with it almost every single day. And then I've also really enjoyed learning about, state and federal land and how some of the multiple use can come in with that. So how do you do like oil and natural gas drilling, grazing, and then also work with like the minerals, other minerals that are under the surface. And I've been able to bring a lot of that back into my classes, especially with my federal lands class. We actually took a grazing quiz the other day, and a lot of the questions were stuff that I had already learned at work.
Nice.
So that made me feel good. And then I've also had the opportunity to work with both the tribal liaisons at the office on various different projects. And I always ask them questions about, what it's like on the reservation and, just learning from their perspective, that sort of thing as well.
Cool. And has any of this changed kind of, and you have like time still to go here at SER, but as you think about your future career goals, has any of these experiences kind of given you more insight in a specific area or changed what you're thinking about your future?
Yeah. I mean, I still do. I wanted to work for a reclamation company after college and put land back together, if you will. And I still really, really want to do that. But working at the governor's office has gotten me really interested in, law and policy. And so it's really opened those doors for me. Like I said, law school is something that I'm thinking about, and I don't know if it's quite the way I want to go yet, but it is a consideration. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the policy advisors there have gone to law school and have given me, tips and tricks on, doing the LSAT and making it through the bar and that sort of
helpful.
thing. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of their law school stories as well. So, it's been helping me make that decision. And then, policy is also not something that I ever considered. And so working in policy has been super interesting. And it's something that I'd like to continue. So I'm, super excited to be able to do it over the summer and keep working with that.
Great. So before this internship, this isn't your first internship.
No. You
spent a summer at Idaho National Lab, which is the nation's nuclear energy lab.
Yeah.
And their portfolio is actually huge.
Yeah.
So what did you work on when you were at INL?
INL, like you said, has a huge portfolio. Not only are they nuclear, but I specifically worked with biomass. I worked in the biomass group. And I looked at switchgrass, which is, it's a native grass to the Midwest, and there's tons of different varieties of it. There's natural kinds, and then there's kinds that people have, engineered, if you will. A lot of what I did at the lab was I did a lot of sample prep. I took samples of switchgrass and I made them into samples that some of the machines could read. And I looked at the energy density of the grass and then wrote a whole report on what kind of variety of grass and like where it grows best within the United States to see if it was like a viable source of energy for the future.
What did you decide?
I don't remember exactly now, but I want to say the Independence variety grown in Nebraska was the best.
Best option?
Yeah.
Cool. So what would you say to other students who are kind of like considering doing an internship? I mean, those are two really different internships.
Yeah.
What would you say? Like, would you recommend taking something outside your normal, like maybe things you know a lot about and get something really different? Or what advice would you give?
Sure. I mean, any internship is great. I mean, both of my internships have been polar opposites, you know, going from the lab to, you know, the governor's office. But I think every single internship that you take has something valuable for you to learn. When I applied to INL last summer, I mean, I was pretty nervous. I mean, it is one of the nation's largest labs. And so when they accepted me, I was super excited, and I was, you know, ready to start work, whatever they, you know, had me working on. And I think that's an important mindset to have. Like, sure, it might not exactly be in your wheelhouse, but like you can always learn more about whatever it is. I mean, at the governor's office, I've been given a couple projects that I know nothing about, but I've been working and trying to learn more about, you know, that situation and that sort of thing, so I can, you know, help the policy advisors make their decisions. And like, I mean, I think it's important to just think positively no matter where you're going. And I mean, especially if your internship's outside Wyoming, like it's a big step. Like when I moved to Idaho last summer, like I was very nervous.
Yeah.
You know, had no family, no friends, and I was, you know, had to be an adult, live by myself. And
it's hard.
But like, I think that was also, well, a valuable experience in itself, you know, learning some of those like life skills outside, you know, school, and being able to work with other people as well.
Good call. Yeah, it's really different, but I'm glad you did it.
Yeah.
So. And I'm glad you decided to spend your education with us here. We really appreciate it. You've been great to have in our program, and we get to keep you for a while longer. So thank you for all you do for us here at the School of Energy Resources. And so for our last question, it's a little different. We just ask, what is your favorite place to visit in Wyoming?
This one was hard. I mean, I've been all over Wyoming.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, anywhere without cell service is fine by me.
Yeah.
Like,
I
don't like to be on my phone very often. But if I had to pick one place, it'd probably have to be, well, around Casper. I mean, I grew up hunting and hiking around Casper. My family lives out and near Alcova, and so I spend a lot of my summers out in Alcova, especially, well, at the Gray Reef. It's one of the best fishing spots in the whole state and probably the whole world.
The universe.
Yeah. It's great. I mean,
so many beautiful gray spots up there. I remember the first time I went down kind of that area, that like canyon in Alcova, I was like, this might be the most beautiful place I've ever been.
In my life. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, so glad that you have those experiences, and really appreciate you spending your time with us. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for being our student and trusting us with your education. And thanks for doing the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape, the podcast that highlights the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. You can expect a new episode of Energy Frontier every other Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.